human fighter trained the overweight alien wolf Empress. Not realizing she'd be grateful, Marcus Cole had seen many strange things in his 32 years of life. He had fought in underground rings on 3 different planets. He had trained soldiers for mercenary companies that operated in the darkest corners of the galaxy. He had broken bones, shed blood, and earned scars that told stories most people would never believe. But nothing in his experience had prepared him for the sight that greeted him when he stepped off the transport ship on the planet Voraka. The spaceport was massive, built from black stone that seemed to absorb the light of the twin suns overhead. Everywhere Marcus looked, he saw the Vorak people moving about their business. They were wolf-like creatures that stood on 2 legs, covered in thick fur of various colors ranging from silver to deep black. Their eyes glowed with inner light, and their fangs were visible even when their mouths were closed. They towered over Marcus by at least 2 feet, and their muscular frames made it clear that they were a warrior species. Marcus felt their eyes on him as he walked through the spaceport. Humans were rare in this part of the galaxy. The Vorak Empire had only recently opened its borders to outsiders, and most species were too afraid to visit a world known for its fierce warriors and ancient traditions of combat. But Marcus was not most people. He had received a contract that paid more credits than he had earned in the last 5 years combined. The job description had been simple enough: train a member of the royal family in human combat techniques. No other details had been provided. A Vorak soldier approached him as he exited the spaceport. The soldier wore armor made of overlapping metal plates that covered his chest and shoulders. His fur was gray, and his yellow eyes studied Marcus with obvious suspicion. "You are the human fighter," the soldier said. It was not a question. "That's right," Marcus replied. "Marcus Cole, I believe someone is expecting me." The soldier made a sound that might have been a grunt of acknowledgement. He turned and began walking without another word. Marcus followed, carrying his single bag of belongings over his shoulder. He had learned long ago to travel light. Everything he needed was either in that bag or in his own body and mind. They traveled through the capital city in a ground vehicle that moved silently through streets made of the same black stone as the spaceport. The buildings around them were tall and imposing, decorated with carvings of wolves and moons and scenes of ancient battles. The Vorak people they passed stopped to stare at the vehicle, and Marcus knew they were staring at him through the darkened windows. The royal palace sat at the center of the city, surrounded by walls that reached toward the sky. Guards stood at every entrance, their weapons gleaming in the sunlight. Marcus was escorted through gate after gate until he finally stood in what appeared to be a private training hall. The hall was enormous, easily large enough to hold 100 fighters. The floor was covered in soft material that Marcus recognized as training mats. Weapons of various types hung on the walls, most of them designed for beings much larger than humans. Mirrors covered one entire wall, reflecting the empty space. "Wait here," the soldier commanded. Then he was gone. Marcus set down his bag and looked around. He stretched his muscles, warming up his body out of habit. Whatever was coming, he wanted to be ready for it. He did not have to wait long. A door at the far end of the hall opened, and a female Vorak entered. Marcus immediately knew she was royalty. She wore robes of deep purple silk that flowed around her body, and a golden circlet rested on her head between her pointed ears. But what struck Marcus most was her size. She was overweight. There was no polite way to describe it. While most Vorak he had seen were lean and muscular, built for combat and speed, this female carried extra weight around her middle and limbs. Her movements were slow and careful, and she was breathing heavily just from crossing the room. Behind her came an older Vorak male with white fur and pale eyes. He moved with the careful grace of someone who had once been a warrior, but whose fighting days were behind him. "Marcus Cole," the older male said. His voice was deep and carried the weight of authority. I am Lord Varen, advisor to the royal family, and this is Her Imperial Majesty, Empress Sura of the Vorak Empire." Marcus felt his stomach drop. He had been hired to train the Empress herself, not just any royal family member, but the ruler of an entire empire. He quickly bowed his head in respect. "Your Majesty," he said. The Empress studied him with eyes the color of molten gold. Her expression was difficult to read, but Marcus thought he detected something like embarrassment in the way she held herself. "You may look at me, human," she said. Her voice was softer than he expected, with a musical quality that contrasted with the harsh speech of other Vorak. "I know what you are thinking. You are thinking that this is some kind of joke, that the Empress of a warrior empire should not look like this." Marcus met her gaze. "I wasn't thinking that, Your Majesty. You are lying, but I appreciate the attempt at kindness." She moved further into the room, and Marcus could see how much effort each step required. "I am going to be honest with you, human. I did not want to hire an outsider, but no Vorak trainer will work with me. They see my condition as a disgrace to our people. They believe that training me is a waste of time." Lord Varen spoke up. "The Empress has faced many challenges since taking the throne 3 years ago. Political pressures, assassination attempts, and the constant judgment of the noble houses have taken their toll." "I stopped caring," Sura said bluntly. "I stopped training. I stopped hunting. I ate to fill the emptiness and ignored what it was doing to my body. And now I am paying the price. My own generals look at me with contempt. My enemies see me as weak, and they are right." She stopped a few feet from Marcus and looked down at him. Even overweight, she was imposing. Her claws were sharp, and her fangs were long, but her eyes held something that Marcus recognized: desperation, shame, a desire to change that was at war with the fear of failure. "I have heard that human fighters are different from all others in the galaxy," she continued. "I have heard that you train differently, that you can take ordinary beings and transform them into warriors. Is this true?" Marcus considered his answer carefully. He had trained many beings over the years. Some had been naturally talented. Others had struggled with every lesson, but he had never turned away anyone who truly wanted to improve. "I can help you, Your Majesty," he said finally. "But I need you to understand something first. Training is hard. It will hurt. There will be days when you want to quit. Days when you hate me for pushing you. I won't go easy on you because you're an empress. If you want to change, you have to be willing to suffer for it." Lord Varen made a sound of protest, but Sura raised her hand to silence him. Her golden eyes never left Marcus's face. "You dare to speak to me like that?" she asked. "You hired me to train you, not to flatter you," Marcus replied. "If you wanted someone to tell you what you want to hear, you picked the wrong human." For a long moment, silence filled the training hall. Then something unexpected happened. The Empress smiled. It was a small smile, barely visible, but it transformed her face. "I like you, Marcus Cole," she said. "You have courage. Most beings tremble when they speak to me. They say what they think I want to hear. But you speak truth, even when it is uncomfortable." "Truth is the only thing worth speaking," Marcus said. She nodded slowly. "Very well. I accept your terms. When do we begin?" "Tomorrow morning. First light. Wear something you can move in. And do not eat anything heavy before we start. You'll only regret it." The Empress raised an eyebrow but did not argue. She turned and walked toward the door, Lord Varen hurrying after her. At the threshold, she paused and looked back over her shoulder. "Marcus Cole," she said, "do not disappoint me. The last person who disappointed me was fed to my hunting beasts." Then she was gone. Marcus stood alone in the training hall, wondering what he had gotten himself into. He had trained soldiers and fighters and mercenaries. He had never trained an empress, and he had certainly never trained someone who could have him executed if she didn't like his methods. He picked up his bag and went to find his quarters. Tomorrow would be a long day. The next morning came too quickly. Marcus had slept poorly, his mind racing with plans and concerns. He woke before the sun rose and made his way to the training hall. To his surprise, Empress Sura was already there. She wore simple clothes, loose pants, and a sleeveless top that exposed her arms. Without the royal robes, she looked smaller somehow, more vulnerable. She was sitting on a bench near the mirrors, staring at her own reflection with an expression of deep sadness. "You're early," Marcus said as he entered. She did not look at him. "I could not sleep. I kept thinking about what you said, that I would need to suffer to change. I have already suffered so much. I am tired of suffering." Marcus set down his equipment and walked over to stand beside her. In the mirror, he could see them both. The small human and the large alien Empress, an unlikely pair. "There are two kinds of suffering," he said. "The kind that breaks you down and leaves you empty, and the kind that builds you up and makes you stronger. The first kind is what you've been through. The second kind is what I'm going to put you through. They feel similar, but they're not the same." She finally turned to look at him. "How do you tell the difference?" "Purpose," Marcus answered. "When you suffer for nothing, it destroys you. When you suffer for something you believe in, it transforms you. So I need to ask you a question before we start. Why do you want to change? What are you fighting for?" The Empress was quiet for a long moment. Her golden eyes grew distant, and Marcus could see memories playing across her face. "My mother was the greatest warrior the Vorak had seen in 1,000 years, she said softly. She led our armies to victory in dozens of battles. She was strong and fierce and beautiful. Everyone loved her. When she died, she left me a legacy I could never live up to. I tried for years to be like her. I failed. And then I stopped trying altogether." She paused, her claws digging into the bench beneath her. "But lately I have been having a dream, the same dream over and over. My mother comes to me and tells me that I am wasting my life. She says that I am capable of more than I know. And when I wake up, I feel like crying because I want to believe her, but I don't know how." Marcus nodded slowly. "Then that's what you're fighting for, to become the warrior your mother believed you could be. Hold on to that. When the training gets hard, remember that dream. Remember her voice." Sura's eyes met his, and for the first time, Marcus saw something other than shame in them. He saw a flicker of hope. "Show me what to do," she said, and so they began. The first session was brutal. Marcus started with basic assessments, testing her flexibility, her strength, her endurance. The results were not encouraging. Years of inactivity had left her muscles weak and her joints stiff. She could barely complete a simple warm-up routine without gasping for breath, but she did not quit. No matter how hard it got, no matter how much her body protested, she kept going. She fell down and got back up. She pushed through the pain and the exhaustion, and when the session finally ended, she was lying on the training mat, covered in sweat, barely able to move. Marcus knelt beside her. "That's enough for today." She turned her head to look at him. "Was I terrible?" "Yes," he said honestly. "But you didn't quit." "That's the only thing that matters on the first day." A weak laugh escaped her lips. "My body feels like it's on fire. It will feel worse tomorrow, but it will get better eventually. I promise." She closed her eyes. "Thank you, Marcus Cole, for not lying to me, for treating me like a warrior instead of a helpless princess." "You're not helpless," Marcus said. "You just forgot who you are. My job is to help you remember." He stood up and offered her his hand. After a moment's hesitation, she took it. Her paw engulfed his human hand completely, but he pulled her to her feet with surprising strength. "Same time tomorrow," he said. "Don't be late." She nodded and limped toward the door, her body protesting every step. but she held her head high. And as Marcus watched her go, he felt something he had not expected. Weeks passed on the planet Varaka, and Marcus fell into a rhythm he had not known in years. Every morning he woke before dawn and prepared the training hall. Every morning, Empress Sura arrived exactly on time, never late, never making excuses. And every morning they worked together until her body could give no more. The changes were slow at first, so slow that Marcus sometimes wondered if they were making any progress at all. Sura's body resisted transformation with stubborn determination. Her muscles ached constantly. Her joints swelled from the unfamiliar strain. There were mornings when she could barely walk, when every movement brought tears to her golden eyes, but she never complained, not once. She gritted her fangs and pushed through the agony, and Marcus found himself respecting her more with each passing day. "Again," he said, watching her struggle through another set of exercises designed to build core strength. "Your form is slipping. Keep your back straight." She growled at him, a low rumble in her chest that might have frightened anyone else. But Marcus had grown used to her expressions of frustration. He knew the difference between a threat and a release of emotion. "I am trying," she said through clenched teeth. "Trying isn't good enough. Do it right or don't do it at all." She snarled, but adjusted her position. Her muscles trembled with the effort, but she held the pose until he told her to stop. Then she collapsed onto the mat, breathing hard, her fur damp with sweat. "You're improving," Marcus said, kneeling beside her. "It doesn't feel like it. It never does when you're in the middle of it. But trust me, 4 weeks ago, you couldn't hold that position for 10 seconds. Now you held it for nearly a minute." She turned her head to look at him, her golden eyes searching his face for any sign of deception. Finding none, she allowed herself a small smile. "You are a strange human, Marcus Cole. You push me harder than anyone ever has. You refuse to accept anything less than my best, and yet somehow I do not hate you for it." "Give it time," Marcus said with a hint of humor. "We haven't gotten to the hard stuff yet." Her ears flattened against her head. "That was not the hard stuff?" "Not even close." She groaned and covered her face with her paws. Marcus laughed, surprising himself. He had not laughed in a long time. As the weeks turned into months, Marcus began to see real changes. Sura's body was transforming. The extra weight was slowly disappearing, replaced by lean muscle that developed beneath her fur. Her movements became more fluid, more controlled. She no longer gasped for breath after simple exercises. She could run and jump and strike without immediately needing to rest. But the physical changes were only part of the transformation. Marcus noticed something else happening. Something in her eyes was different. The shame and desperation that had clouded her gaze when they first met was fading. In its place grew a quiet confidence, a spark of pride that flickered brighter with each small victory. Lord Varen noticed the changes, too. He visited the training hall regularly, watching from the sidelines with his pale, old eyes. At first, he had seemed skeptical of the human trainer and his strange methods. But as time passed, his expression softened into something like admiration. "You are working miracles, Marcus Cole," he said one afternoon, pulling Marcus aside while Sura practiced striking combinations on a training dummy. "It's not miracles," Marcus replied. "It's just hard work. She's doing all of it herself. I'm only showing her the way." "You are being modest. I have known Sura since she was a pup. I watched her mother train her, watched her grow into a promising young warrior before grief and pressure crushed her spirit. Many others tried to help her over the years. They all failed. But you are succeeding." Marcus watched Sura deliver a powerful kick that sent the training dummy spinning. Her form was still rough, but there was real strength behind the blow. "She wanted to change," he said simply. "That makes all the difference. You can't help someone who doesn't want to be helped." Lord Varen nodded slowly. "There is wisdom in your words, human. But I wonder if there is more to it than that. I have seen the way she looks at you when you are not watching. I have seen how hard she works to earn your approval. You have given her something that no one else could. What's that? Belief, the old Vorak said. You believe in her. And because you believe, she is learning to believe in herself. Marcus had no response to that. He simply watched as Sura continued her training, attacking the dummy with increasing ferocity. Her growls echoed through the hall, primal and powerful. She was becoming a warrior. As Sura's transformation continued, the palace began to take notice. Servants whispered in the corridors. Guards exchanged meaningful glances when the Empress walked past. The noble houses sent spies to observe her training, and the reports they carried back caused a stir throughout the empire. Not everyone was pleased by the changes. Marcus first became aware of the danger during a rare evening off. He was walking through the palace gardens, enjoying the cool night air and the strange alien flowers that bloomed beneath the twin moons. He had let his guard down, relaxing for the first time in weeks. That was his mistake. They came at him from 3 directions at once. 4 Vorak males, their fur dark as shadows, their eyes gleaming with violent intent. They carried no weapons, but their claws and fangs were weapon enough. Marcus had been fighting his entire life. His body reacted before his mind fully processed the threat. He ducked under the first attacker's swipe, rolled to avoid the second, and came up with his fists ready. They were faster than him, stronger than him. Their reach was longer, and their natural weapons were deadly. In a fair fight, Marcus would have been torn apart in seconds. But Marcus had never fought fair fights. He used their size against them, staying inside their reach where their long limbs became a disadvantage. He struck at vulnerable points, targeting joints and pressure points that were similar to human anatomy. When one attacker overextended, Marcus grabbed his arm and used his own momentum to send him crashing into another. The fight was brutal and desperate. Marcus took hits that would have killed a lesser fighter. Claws raked across his arm, leaving deep gashes that bled freely. A kick to his ribs cracked something inside him, but he kept moving, kept fighting, refusing to go down. When the palace guards finally arrived, 3 of the attackers were unconscious on the ground. The 4th was fleeing into the darkness. Marcus was on his knees, bleeding from a dozen wounds, barely conscious. The last thing he saw before passing out was Sura's face above him, her golden eyes wide with fear and something else he couldn't identify. He woke in a medical chamber, his wounds treated and bandaged. Sura was sitting beside his bed, still wearing her training clothes. Her fur was matted and her eyes were red, as if she had been crying. "You're awake," she said softly. "What happened?" Marcus tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. Pain lanced through his entire body. "You were attacked by members of House Volrath. They are rivals to my throne, and they have opposed me since the day I took power." Her voice was tight with controlled anger. "They thought that by killing you they could stop my transformation. They thought I would give up without you. Will you?" Her eyes met his, and in them burned a fire that Marcus had never seen before. "No. I will hunt them down and make them pay for what they did. They hurt someone I care about. They will learn that the Empress they thought was weak has become something else entirely." Marcus managed a weak smile. "That's the spirit." She reached out and gently touched his bandaged arm, her claws carefully retracted. "You could have died, Marcus. You should have died. Any other being would have fallen to those assassins. But you fought them off. 4 trained Vorak warriors, and you defeated them with nothing but your bare hands." "I've had a lot of practice. It is more than that. I have been studying humans since I hired you. Your species is fascinating. You are smaller than most galactic races, weaker, shorter-lived. You have no claws, no fangs, no natural armor. By all logic, you should have been wiped out long ago." She leaned closer, her golden eyes intense. "But you were not wiped out. You survived. You conquered your world and spread to the stars. And when I look at you, I think I understand why. You do not know how to give up. You do not know how to accept defeat. You just keep fighting, no matter how impossible the odds." Marcus looked up at her. In the low light of the medical chamber, she seemed different. Not like the sad, overweight Empress he had met months ago. Not even like the emerging warrior she had become. She seemed like something more, something ancient and powerful. "That's the secret," he said quietly. "The only difference between winning and losing is whether you keep getting up. Everything else is just details." Sura was silent for a long moment. Then she did something unexpected. She leaned down and pressed her forehead against his, a gesture that Marcus would later learn was the Vorak equivalent of a kiss. "Rest now," she whispered. "Heal. When you are recovered, we will continue your work. But this time, you will not just be training me. You will be training my personal guard. I want an army of warriors who fight like humans." "That's a big job." "I know. But I have faith in you, Marcus Cole. You have earned it." She straightened and walked toward the door. At the threshold, she paused and looked back at him with those burning golden eyes. "The assassins will be dealt with. House Volrath will learn that threatening my people has consequences. And when I stand before them in judgment, I want you there beside me. Can you do that?" "I'll be there," Marcus promised. She nodded once and disappeared through the door. Marcus lay back and stared at the ceiling. His body was broken, but his spirit was strong. He had been in worse situations than this. He had always found a way through. But something was different now. Something had changed during those months of training. He cared about what happened to Sura, not just as a client or a student, but as a person. Her success mattered to him in a way that no job had ever mattered before. He closed his eyes and let sleep take him. His last thoughts filled with golden eyes and the promise of battles yet to come. The weeks of recovery were difficult for Marcus. He was not used to being still, not used to letting others take care of him. But Sura insisted that he rest, and her insistence carried the weight of imperial command. She visited him every day, sometimes staying for hours. They talked about everything and nothing. She told him about her childhood, about her mother's legendary battles, about the weight of the crown that she never wanted to wear. He told her about Earth, about the underground fighting rings where he learned his craft, about the years he spent wandering the galaxy in search of purpose. They learned about each other, they understood each other, and somewhere in those long conversations, something shifted between them. Marcus noticed it in the way she looked at him when she thought he wasn't watching, in the way her voice softened when she spoke his name, in the way her paw would find his hand and linger there, her claws carefully sheathed. He noticed it in himself, too, in the way his heart beat faster when she entered the room, in the way he found himself thinking about her even when she wasn't there, in the way her smile made everything else seem less important. It was dangerous. He knew it was dangerous. She was an Empress, and he was a human trainer. The gap between them was wider than the space between stars. But Marcus had never been afraid of danger. When he was finally healed enough to return to training, everything felt different. The training hall that had once been just a workplace now felt like something more. A shared space. A place where they could be themselves, away from the politics and pressures of the imperial court. Sura had continued training during his recovery, practicing the techniques he had taught her with fierce determination. She proudly demonstrated her progress, moving through combat forms with grace and power that would have been unimaginable when they first met. "You've been working hard," Marcus observed. "I had something to prove," she replied, "to myself and to you." She stopped in front of him, breathing slightly faster from the exertion. She was beautiful, not in the way that humans typically understood beauty, but in a way that transcended species and culture. She was powerful and vulnerable, fierce and gentle, ancient and new, all at once. "Marcus," she said quietly, "there is something I must tell you." "What is it?" "The trial of House Volrath is tomorrow. They will be brought before me to answer for their crimes. But there is more at stake than justice. The other noble houses will be watching. If I appear weak, they will see it as an invitation to challenge my rule. If I appear strong, they will fall in line." "And you're worried about appearing strong?" She shook her head. "No, that is no longer my worry. You have given me strength I never knew I had. But I am worried about something else." She paused, her golden eyes meeting his. "I am worried about what comes after." "After?" "After the trial. After I deal with my enemies and secure my throne. After I no longer need a trainer." Her voice trembled slightly. "Will you leave, Marcus? Will you return to your human worlds and forget about the overweight Empress you helped become a warrior?" Marcus stood very still. He had asked himself the same question many times during his recovery. He had always told himself that he would leave when the job was done. That was what he had always done before. But this time was different. "No," he said finally. "I won't leave. Not unless you send me away." Relief flooded her face, followed by something that looked like joy. She stepped forward and wrapped her arms around him, pulling him into an embrace that should have been awkward given their size difference, but instead felt perfectly right. "Good," she whispered into his hair. "Because I am not ready to let you go, Marcus Cole. I do not think I will ever be ready." They stood there together in the training hall, holding each other as the alien sun set beyond the windows. Two beings from different worlds, different species, different lives, brought together by circumstance and transformed by something neither of them had expected. Tomorrow would bring trials and politics and the weight of an empire. But tonight, they had each other. And for Marcus, that was enough. He felt proud of her. This was going to be harder than any training he had ever done. But looking at the determination in the Empress's eyes, he thought it might also be the most important. The Grand Hall of Judgment was the largest chamber in the palace. Its ceiling rose so high that it disappeared into darkness, and its walls were lined with ancient banners bearing the symbols of every noble house in the Vorak Empire. Hundreds of spectators filled the viewing galleries, their eyes fixed on the raised platform at the center where justice would be delivered. Marcus stood at the edge of the platform, dressed in formal attire that Lord Varen had insisted upon. He felt uncomfortable in the stiff clothing, but he understood the importance of appearances. Today, every eye in the Empire would be watching. The members of House Volrath were brought in chains. There were 7 of them, including the 4 assassins who had attacked Marcus in the gardens. Their patriarch, a massive gray-furred male named Lord Krath, walked at the front of the group. His yellow eyes burned with defiance, and his posture suggested that he considered the chains around his wrists to be a temporary inconvenience rather than a symbol of defeat. The crowd fell silent as Empress Sura entered the hall. Marcus felt his breath catch in his throat. She was magnificent. Gone was any trace of the overweight, defeated Empress he had met nearly a year ago. In her place stood a warrior queen, lean and powerful, her muscles visible beneath a ceremonial gown that left her arms bare. She moved with the fluid grace of a predator, each step deliberate and controlled. But it was her eyes that struck Marcus most. Her golden gaze swept across the hall with the authority of someone who knew exactly who she was and what she was capable of. There was no fear there, no hesitation. Only the calm confidence of a ruler who had earned her power through blood and sweat and determination. She took her place on the throne at the center of the platform. Her voice rang out clear and strong. Lord Krath of House Volrath. You stand accused of conspiracy against the throne and attempted murder of an imperial guest. How do you answer these charges? Lord Krath lifted his gray muzzle and laughed. It was a harsh, ugly sound that echoed through the silent hall. I answer that you are not fit to sit on that throne, girl. Your mother was a warrior. You are a disgrace to her memory. I did what any true Vorak would do when faced with weakness in leadership. I tried to remove the problem. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Marcus watched the other noble houses, reading their reactions. Some seemed to agree with Lord Krath. Others appeared uncertain, waiting to see how Sura would respond to this open challenge. Sura remained perfectly still. When she spoke again, her voice was eerily calm. You call me weak. You say I am not fit to rule. Tell me, Lord Krath, when was the last time you faced an opponent in single combat? The question seemed to surprise him. His brow furrowed. What does that have to do with anything? It has everything to do with everything. Our people value strength above all else. You claim I am weak. I say you are wrong. She rose from her throne and descended the steps until she stood directly in front of him. I challenge you to trial by combat. If you defeat me, House Volrath goes free, and I will abdicate my throne. If I defeat you, your house is dissolved, your lands are forfeit, and you will spend the rest of your life in the deepest dungeon of this palace. The hall erupted in chaos. Trial by combat was an ancient tradition, rarely invoked in modern times. For an empress to offer such a challenge was unprecedented. For her to risk her throne on a single fight was madness. Lord Varon rushed forward. Your Majesty, I must advise against this. The risk is too great. The risk is necessary, Sura replied without looking at him. Her eyes never left Lord Krath. My people need to see that their empress is not afraid. They need to see what I have become. Lord Krath was studying her with new interest. His earlier contempt was giving way to calculation. He was a large male, experienced in combat, confident in his abilities. Against the old Sura, he would have won easily. But this new empress was an unknown quantity. Still, his pride would not let him refuse. To back down from a challenge in front of every noble house would be worse than death for a Vorak warrior. I accept, he growled. I will enjoy putting you in your place, girl. Sura smiled. It was not a kind smile. You may try. The guards cleared a space in the center of the hall. Weapons were brought forward and offered to both combatants. Lord Krath selected a heavy blade, a traditional Vorak sword designed for powerful slashing attacks. Sura chose nothing. No weapon, Lord Krath sneered. Is this a joke? My body is my weapon, Sura replied. My trainer taught me that a true warrior does not need steel to be dangerous. Marcus felt a surge of pride mixed with fear. He had taught her well, but Lord Krath was a formidable opponent. This fight would push her to her absolute limits. The signal was given, and Lord Krath attacked immediately. He was fast despite his size, his blade cutting through the air with lethal precision. But Sura was faster. She danced away from his strikes, moving with a fluidity that Marcus recognized. She was using the footwork he had drilled into her during countless hours of training. Lord Krath pressed his attack, growing more aggressive as his frustration mounted. Each swing was harder than the last, each thrust more desperate. But Sura remained just out of reach, never stopping, never standing still long enough for him to land a solid blow. The crowd watched in stunned silence. This was not the overweight Empress they remembered. This was something else entirely. Then Sura went on the offensive. She moved inside Lord Krath's reach so quickly that he barely had time to react. Her palm struck his wrist, numbing the nerves and weakening his grip on the sword. Before he could recover, her elbow drove into his ribs, followed by a knee to his thigh that buckled his leg. He swung wildly, but she was already behind him. A precise kick to the back of his knee sent him crashing down. His sword clattered across the floor, out of reach. Sura stood over him, not even breathing hard. "Yield!" Lord Crath struggled to rise, but his injured leg would not support him. He looked up at her with hatred blazing in his yellow eyes. "Never!" he snarled. "Kill me if you want. I will not yield to you." "Very well." She moved so fast that Marcus almost missed it. Her foot swept his arms out from under him, dropping him face first onto the stone floor. Then she was on his back, her arm wrapped around his throat in a chokehold that Marcus had taught her specifically for larger opponents. Lord Crath thrashed and struggled, but he could not break her grip. His movements grew weaker as the blood supply to his brain was cut off. His struggles became feeble. His eyes began to close. "Yield," Sura said again, her voice calm and controlled. "Or die. The choice is yours." For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, barely audible, Lord Crath spoke. "I yield." Sura released him immediately. She rose to her feet and stepped back, looking down at the defeated lord with no expression on her face. The hall exploded into noise. Cheers erupted from some galleries, while others sat in shocked silence. The noble houses that had supported House Volrath looked at each other with uncertainty and fear. The balance of power had shifted dramatically in the space of a few minutes. Sura raised her hand, and the hall fell silent once more. House Volrath is dissolved as of this moment. Their lands and wealth are forfeit to the throne. Lord Crath will be imprisoned for the remainder of his days. The other members of his house will be exiled to the outer territories. She turned to address the assembled nobles. "Let this be a lesson to all who would challenge my rule. I am not the Empress you remember. I have been reborn in fire and pain, and I will not hesitate to defend my throne against any who threaten it." Her eyes found Marcus in the crowd. Even across the distance of the Great Hall, he could see the message in them. "Thank you. This is because of you." He nodded slightly, and she smiled. The trial was over. The challenge had been met. And the Vorak Empire had witnessed the birth of a new era. In the weeks that followed, everything changed. Word of the Empress's victory spread throughout the empire like wildfire. Stories of her transformation grew with each telling until she became the subject of legends. The noble houses that had once plotted against her now bent their knees in submission. Her generals, who had looked upon her with contempt, now treated her with respect and even admiration. But for Marcus, the most important change was personal. Sura summoned him to her private chambers one evening, 3 weeks after the trial. The rooms were smaller than he expected for an empress, filled with personal items and mementos rather than grand displays of wealth. He noticed a portrait of her mother on one wall, a beautiful Vorak female with the same golden eyes as her daughter. Sura was standing by the window, looking out at the city below. She was dressed simply, without her crown or ceremonial robes. In the soft light of the setting suns, she looked almost peaceful. "Thank you for coming," she said without turning around. "You summoned me. I came." "So formal." She turned to face him, and there was amusement in her eyes. "I thought we were past that, Marcus." He allowed himself a small smile. "Old habits." She crossed the room until she stood directly in front of him. They were alone, without guards or servants or watching eyes. Just the two of them, as they had been so many times in the training hall. "I have been thinking," she said quietly, "about everything that has happened, about how much my life has changed since you arrived, about what I want for the future." "And what do you want?" She reached out and took his hand in her paw. Her claws were carefully retracted, and her touch was gentle. "I want you to stay, not as a trainer, not as an employee, as something more." She paused, seeming to gather her courage. "I know that what I am asking is unusual. Humans and Vorak have never bonded in this way. There will be those who object, who say it is improper, who question my judgment. Do you care what they think? No, she said simply. I stopped caring about what others think the day you taught me to believe in myself. All I care about is what you think, what you want. Marcus looked into her golden eyes. He saw the warrior she had become, forged through suffering and determination. He saw the Empress who had faced her enemies without fear and emerged victorious. But most of all, he saw the woman who had opened her heart to him despite every reason not to. He had spent his whole life wandering, fighting, surviving. He had never allowed himself to hope for more than that. But standing here, in this moment with this impossible alien Empress holding his hand, he realized that he had found something he never knew he was looking for. A home, a purpose, a love that transcended the boundaries between species and worlds. I want to stay, he said. I want to be with you. Whatever that looks like, whatever challenges it brings, I'm ready to face them. Her face lit up with joy. She pulled him into an embrace, lifting him off his feet with her strength. He laughed, actually laughed as she spun him around. You have made me very happy, Marcus Cole, she said, setting him back down. I did not think I could be this happy ever again. You deserve to be happy, he replied. After everything you've been through, after how hard you've fought. You deserve all the happiness in the galaxy. She pressed her forehead against his, that intimate Vorak gesture that had come to mean so much to him. I was so alone before you came, she whispered. I had given up on everything, on my throne, on my legacy, on myself. You saved me, Marcus. You saw something in me that no one else could see, and you helped me find it. You did the work. You suffered through every training session, every painful morning, every moment when you wanted to quit. All I did was show you the path. You're the one who walked it. Then we saved each other, she said. Because before I met you, you were wandering the galaxy without purpose. Now you have one. We have one. Together. Marcus nodded. She was right. They had saved each other in ways that neither could have predicted. The overweight Empress and the human fighter, an unlikely pair that had become something beautiful. They stood together by the window as the twin suns set over the city. The future stretched out before them, full of challenges and possibilities. There would be political battles to fight, prejudices to overcome, and an empire to rule. Nothing would be easy. But Marcus had never been afraid of hard work, and with Sura by his side, he knew that they could face anything. Months later, the official announcement came. Empress Sura of the Vorak Empire would take a consort, not a Vorak noble as tradition demanded, but a human fighter named Marcus Cole. The news shocked the galaxy. Some called it madness. Some called it a sign of the Empress's continued mental decline, but those who saw them together knew the truth. They saw the way she looked at him, like he was the most precious thing in the universe. They saw the way he stood beside her, protective and proud, ready to face any threat. The wedding was held in the great hall where Sura had defeated Lord Krath. Every noble house was in attendance, along with dignitaries from a dozen other species. It was the most elaborate ceremony the Empire had seen in generations. But for Marcus, none of that mattered. All that mattered was the moment when Sura took his hand and spoke the ancient words of bonding. All that mattered was the way her golden eyes shone with tears of joy. All that mattered was the knowledge that he had found his place in the universe. After the ceremony, they stood on the balcony of the palace, looking out at the celebrating crowds below. Sura leaned against him, her tail wrapped around his waist. Are you happy? She asked. More than I ever thought possible. Good. She nuzzled against his neck. Because I have something to tell you. Something I have been keeping secret until after the wedding. Marcus felt a flicker of concern. What is it? She placed her paw on her stomach and looked up at him with a mixture of nervousness and joy. I am carrying your child, Marcus. Our child. The healers say it should not be possible that humans and Vorak are too different. But it is happening. We have created new life together. Marcus stared at her, his mind struggling to process what she was saying. A child. His child. Their child. Half human, half Vorak. Something entirely new. That's... He stopped, unable to find the words. That's incredible. You are not upset? I know we never discussed this. I know it complicates everything. He pulled her close, holding her as tightly as he could without hurting her. I'm not upset. I'm amazed. I'm grateful. He laughed, a sound of pure joy. I'm going to be a father. She laughed with him, relief flooding her features. We are going to be parents. Can you imagine? A little half-human, half-Vorak pup running through these halls? I can imagine it perfectly. They held each other as the celebrations continued below. Two beings from different worlds, brought together by fate and forged into something stronger through love and determination. Their story was only beginning, but already it had become a legend. The human fighter who trained the overweight alien wolf Empress. The Empress who found her strength and gave him a home. And the child who would one day inherit an empire that her parents had saved together. It was a story that would be told for generations, a story about the power of belief, the strength found in suffering, and the love that can bloom between the most unlikely souls. And it all started with a simple contract, a training hall, and a human who refused to give up on anyone, not even himself.